Yo, what's up? So at the beginning of this year, I decided to upgrade from my old 2016 15-inch MacBook Pro with the touch bar to the then newly released 16-inch MacBook Pro with the M1 Pro chip, and it was the base model. I watched a ton of videos before I made the decision to go for that specific model, and I came to the conclusion that the base model should be more than enough for my particular needs. Almost a year has passed since I made that decision, and I think it is just about time to tell you whether or not it was the right choice for me, or if I should have probably upgraded something about this MacBook, like the storage or the CPU or whatever. So let's talk about it. But before we go into any of that, just a bit of housekeeping. I'm using a camera that is completely new to me, so if this video looks slightly off, please keep that in mind, bear with me for a bit. I'm trying to figure this all out, and also if this sounds different, that's, well, for the same reason basically. Oh yeah, and also I will touch on many different subjects in regards to this MacBook Pro, so if you only care about any particular issue, feel free to use the timestamps in the description below, no hard feelings. Okay, so let's start off with one of the points that has been a bit so-so for me, and that is reliability. First of all though, nothing major has happened. Nothing's broken, nothing stopped working entirely, unlike with my previous 15-inch MacBook Pro with the touch bar, where the keyboard actually broke and I had to send that guy in, and it took them more than a month to get it fixed. So none of that has happened with this 16-inch MacBook Pro, and that is a good thing. But that is not to say that I didn't have some reliability issues. These were, however, rather minor hiccups overall, but still, I think they are at least worth mentioning. So what happened to me, and I'm sure this happened to many other people as well, is that ever so often this MacBook just froze up. So nothing worked, it had to reboot, and then everything was just back to normal, completely fine, but it froze sometimes mid-project. I've never actually lost any data or anything, so not a big deal for me, just kind of an annoyance. But especially at the beginning when I just got the MacBook, it happened fairly often. So we're talking like once a week maybe. By the looks of things though, Apple seems to have fixed that issue, because that hasn't happened to me now for several months. I don't know if it's fixed completely or if I just gotten lucky for whatever reason, but yeah, it seems to be gone. So if you are not an early adopter of this new machine and you're just thinking about buying one now, you might get lucky and you might not have to deal with that issue at all. No guarantees though. And other than that, in terms of reliability, it has been completely fine. The MacBook overall is a very, very well built machine. There are just the slightest scratches, maybe here and there, especially near the ports, but nothing major whatsoever. It just feels so solid. It is a very reliable machine. And yeah, other than those slight hiccups, I don't have anything bad to say about it in terms of reliability. Another point of contention, especially with this bigger 16-inch model, is its size and weight. And let me tell you, much to my own surprise, and honestly I didn't want to admit that to myself at the beginning, the size and weight difference, even when you compare it to the previous 15-inch MacBook Pro with the touch bar that I had before that, it is noticeable. It is certainly very noticeable, and it has actually kept me from bringing it to several places just because I didn't feel like lugging that massive brick around all day. Also, aside from its weight, with its size, it is actually quite a snug fit in several of my backpacks, which never gave me any problems with the previous 15-inch MacBook Pro that I was using before. So the new MacBook does actually have some scratches on its case, because it sits so snug up to the zippers of some of my backpacks. On the other hand though, that design and the size especially does obviously also come with its particular advantages, even over the 14-inch model, and those advantages are for the most part the extra screen real estate that you get, and, at least from what I've heard, the added battery life. So for me, I gotta be honest, even with that size and weight disadvantage that I just mentioned, and even though I have left it at home at times, it's not really that big of an issue, because for the most part, I am using my MacBook Pro at home. I'm using it in different locations at home, be it on the couch, in the office, at the living room table, or whatever. But yeah, regardless, I'm pretty much always using it at home. And having that extra screen real estate, having a 16-inch beautiful display to work with, That's just nice. And also, I kind of feared that if I would have gone from the 15.4-inch MacBook Pro to the 14-inch model, I feared that that might have felt like a bit of a downgrade. The display itself would have certainly still been better, but yeah, it's just that smaller size. With that being said though, if you're more inclined to use your MacBook at home with an external monitor anyway, I guess that difference doesn't matter at all. And if that is the case, I would actually recommend to go with the 14-inch model instead. I don't think that I have to say much about the speed and the performance. You've all seen the videos, you've all seen the benchmarks. It is just outrageously fast. I've never had any issues with the performance, and I've never been so happy with the performance of any other electronic device that I've ever bought in my life before. It is just ridiculous how easily this guy handles even 10-bit 4K 422 footage on multiple streams without even getting hot or having the fan spool up or anything at all. Even the battery life is just unfazed by that. I can load a project and start scrubbing and cutting immediately. I can grade multiple layers of S-Log3 10-bit 422 footage without complaint. Sure, the stuff that I'm doing with this MacBook Pro in Final Cut is certainly not the most intense workflow or video stuff that anyone has ever done, but still, my old MacBook Pro certainly couldn't handle that stuff. Even in the well-optimized Final Cut Pro 10, not even close. With that old machine, I was just lagging my way through any project and ran out of battery after just an hour of terrible editing experience. And if I would somehow manage to get to the end of an edit, I would still have to wait for hours until it was finished rendering that project. With the new 16-inch M1 Pro MacBook Pro though, it takes just a couple of minutes, and for the most part the time it takes to edit these projects is shorter than the time it would take to play back those projects. So with that, I don't even have to factor in the time that it takes to render these projects. In terms of disk space, again, I went with the base model with the 512GB SSD, and I have zero regrets. With that amount of space, I'm usually able to store 3 or 4 video projects, as well as my personal stuff on this MacBook. With that being said, I also do have a 1TB SanDisk Extreme SSD that I can use even for video editing, as well as a bunch of bigger external hard drives that I use to store all of my video files, photos, and personal stuff that I don't need on a daily basis. I certainly don't mind sorting through my hard drive every couple of weeks or so and just cleaning it up and moving everything over to external hard drives. If you do, however, you might want to go for a bit more storage. Again, has never been an issue for me, and I'm able to manage just fine. On the same note also, again, with the baseline model, you only get 16 gigs of RAM, and that was honestly kind of my biggest fear, that that would not be enough for stuff like video editing and all that, but it has not been an issue whatsoever. Apparently, this MacBook is just able to utilize the SSD as kind of additional RAM. No idea how that works, but apparently it does, because I never had any issues. It has been buttery smooth all the way. So yeah, even with the 16 gigs of RAM, no regrets whatsoever. There's also a bunch of other stuff that I absolutely love about this machine, but since most of it is pretty obvious, I'll try to keep it short. The display is by far the best that I've ever used. It is a joy in every way, and because it is not only such high quality but also fairly big, I don't feel like I have to use this MacBook with an external monitor every time I am at home. In fact, I rarely ever do. Most of the time I use this MacBook on my lap, on the couch, or sitting on the living room table. It's just a joy, and the cheap BS 28-inch 4K Samsung monitor that I'm using in my office just cannot compete with it in any area other than sheer size. The sound quality from those tiny speakers is also out of this world, even when you compare it to previous MacBook generations. I've been using this MacBook for almost a year now, and to this day I'm still sometimes just blown away by the soundstage that this still comparatively tiny machine is able to create. Of course, that will probably not translate on video at all, so you just have to take my word for it, or if you have a chance, give it a try for yourself. The keyboard and trackpad are also lovely, no surprise here, but especially after the last MacBook Pro keyboard disaster, I'm frankly just happy to have the old style keyboard back. The trackpad was honestly almost too big for me in the beginning, and I had to get used to it for a bit, but now I wouldn't want to have it any other way. This is no surprise either, but having an SD card reader once again is just nice. And while we are at it, so is having MagSafe back on board. It is a bit sad that it took them over half a decade to figure that stuff out, but it seems that we are once again back with 2015 MacBook Pro standards. That's good stuff. With all of that positive stuff out of the way, there are also a couple of things that I could certainly do without. The notch, for example, doesn't really bother me, but I surely wouldn't miss it if it were to disappear. And the overall design is just a bit meh. The previous design was certainly more elegant in my view. But hey, this design is certainly more functional, and I would take the added benefits of that functionality over the aesthetic of the old generation any day of the week. So in conclusion, do I have any regrets? Would I buy it again, or would I maybe spec it out differently if I had to do it all over again? Well, if I'm completely honest, if I were to actually buy this machine again, I would think long and hard about going for the 14-inch model instead. And the main reason for that is simply because you do lose a bit of portability, especially with that added weight. The size has also been an issue for me at times because I wasn't able to fit this guy into some of my backpacks, but the weight would certainly be the main deciding factor here. From what I've heard, 14 inches works just fine for video editing, photo editing and all of that stuff on the go. And the battery life is probably not far behind what I'm getting with this 16-inch model. So yeah, if I would have to buy it again, I would most likely go for the 14-inch baseline model. But even while I'm saying that right now, I'm still kind of glad that I do have the 16-inch model because it is just such a beautiful display and such a beautiful machine to use. So I'm very happy while I got it. I certainly wouldn't sell it and trade it in for a 14-inch model, but if I were to lose it or break it, I would maybe go for the 14-inch model with my next purchase. But anyway, that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video was helpful to you. If you want to see more videos, hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button if you like this video, and yeah, until next time, take good care. Bye bye.